Hey everyone, welcome to the Crypto Weekend Review. I know, well, I say it every week what a week it's been. This week actually has been, it seems a little bit quieter, although there, of course, was no shortage of interesting stuff going on in the news. Obviously, we've got some, you know, um, we've got a new blockchain on the horizon, one that looks uh, awfully similar to one that was recently in the news. But we'll talk about that. We've got some political news to discuss, at least some political funding news, um, as well as a new entrant into the NFT space that turned some heads this week. So why don't we go ahead and kick it off? Let's start with the goblins. I think that would be a fun place to start off this week. Christian, you're a resident NFT spotter. Tell us about Goblintown and how they took the world by storm, or at least Ethereum by storm this week.
Yeah, sure. Goblintown is relatively new collection. It dropped just 1 week ago, and kind of borrows from the template of a lot of other successful projects that we saw in NFTs over the last year or so. So there's a similar kind of profile picture kind of avatar format where there are different characters on each, and these ones are like these fairly like grotesque looking goblins, and they were given away a week ago. So it was like a standard 10,000 set. They kept 1,000 for themselves, and then 9,000 were given away with a free mint. And yeah, over the past sort of 7 days, we've seen them rally on OpenSea. So at one point, they were like the second most traded collection, and the floor price for one of these things hit 2 ETH. So given that ETH is down a bit at the moment, it was about $3,500 at the time. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of dipped since then, but there have been other derivatives that have come out and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think the reason this collection did well, or sort of has this sort of buzz at the moment, is kind of that it's sort of making fun of firstly the profile picture trend, because these things are like, they, at least how when I look at them, it's like they look deliberately bad, like the artwork, and also just the idea of Goblintown itself refers to like the crypto bear, like a deep winter phase, like a bear market in crypto. So crypto people say like we're in Goblintown when prices are down, and obviously the team behind this kind of saw that. I don't know when, maybe they only came up with this concept very recently, and it turns out that this has worked well for them. I mean, I'm looking at the page now, and there's 10,000 ETH has been traded in the last week on OpenSea, and given that although they gave them away for free, every time one of these is traded, they take like a cut from this. That's generally how NFTs work. And so yeah, this has been kind of the one that everyone is talking about this week. We often see in NFTs that it's kind of like some stuff has a short buzz, and it's like the thing that takes the spotlight for a week. Like we talked about Moonbirds a few weeks ago. This is kind of the one of this week. Although not as much for a parabolic rise as Moonbirds have. And yeah, I mean, the team behind it, they've been very specific with the marketing. Like, it's just a bit bizarre the way they communicate. Culminating in this Twitter space is cool that a few hundred people tuned into earlier this week, where the team, from what I understand, I didn't listen, but were basically just making like goblin noises down the microphone. And there were like 800 or more people listening. And that was when the price of them went up. Another thing to mention is that they're CCO, so like there's no copyright reserve, so anyone can use them anywhere. And Yeah, I mean the floor is down now, so it's 1.4 ETH, but still, if you minted one of these for free, or maybe if you minted, 10 of these, if you saw it early and were like, oh, this is going to do well, then that's quite a nice return for 7 days. Um, yeah.
um, I'm. I guess I'm glad I had my mic muted. I was just rolling on the floor laughing when you talked about the goblin noises in the Twitter space. This project strikes me as delightful. I obviously didn't get my own Goblintown, but this seems like a lot of fun. When people I meet at conferences and meetups and such talk about working in the crypto space, they always have to comment on how much fun it is to be in this business, and I can only assume they're talking about stuff like this, but beyond just its simple, sheer goofiness and delightfulness, I guess. Does this signal anything about the NFT space in a bear market that we should be paying attention to, or is it just a flash in the pan, goofy thing that'll be gone next week? Tim, you're into NFTs, and I always call on you about this point in time on the show. What do you think? Is Goblintown just a curious little thing, or is it show there's still some life in this market?
It shows, I think, that if something is of a high quality and it's executed well, it can still, create that same kind of excitement and mania that we see in bull markets. And I think that's exactly what Goblin Town is. I think that you can tell. I would say if anyone hasn't checked it out already, go on the website. There's like a background music that plays that's very like well crafted. It definitely invokes the kind of spirit of the project well. The art, although it does look very grotesque and you know bad depending on who you ask, it's very well done. It's well drawn. Thematically, I think it's quite good. It's gets the message across of what it's trying to be very well. Um, so yeah, I guess think that's my point is that despite being in a bear market, if something good comes out and people can recognize quality and they'll still go mad for it. A couple of extra points as well is that I'm pretty sure that there's no royalty fees attached to these. So if you purchase one on OpenSea, a percent of that sale doesn't go back to the creators. It's just a 2.5% that goes to OpenSea or whichever exchange, sort of marketplace you're using, which is interesting. And like Christian said, they minted completely for free. I didn't get one either, unfortunately. It was like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning for me, so I completely missed it. I didn't expect them to blow up until like I saw them at like like at 7.7 ETH or something like that. I was like, whoa, need to pay attention to these. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say on that. I'm really excited to find out who's behind the project as well. There's been some speculation over that. My favorite theory, which I wouldn't be surprised if it would turned out to be true, is that it's Mike Judge. He's the I guess you call him artist or the brains behind Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, the movie Office Space, and a bunch more projects. And so a lot of people pointed out that the art style is very reminiscent of Beavis and Butthead, and so is the kind of toilet humor, like the crassness of it as well.
Yeah, wasn't sure if I was going to bring up the Mike Judge theory or not, but the more I think about it, I mean, I feel like part of me thinks we would know if you were behind it, that they couldn't keep that a secret too long. But I really like the idea, in part because I like Mike Judge, and it strikes me as the kind of um, absurdist humor that he might go into. I think a lot of what has made Goblintown successful is just the sheer humor of it. Like, these are bleak times, and during bleak times, or at least from the charts perspective, they're bleak times. And finding humor in those sort of problematic places, I think, really resonates with people. So I think that had a lot to do with Goblintown's success. I'd like to get Mitchell's opinion before we move on. I know you're pretty skeptical of NFTs, and this strikes me as fad number one in your book. Am I reading that correctly, or do you think there's anything special to it?
I think these Goblintowns are kind of cute. Like they gave them away
They
for
are.
free, so I think it's less of a scummy way to make money off of NFTs than minting them at a really high price initially and having ridiculous whitelists and stuff like that. So I think making money off of affiliate fees is a pretty genuine way to only extract value if there's interest and activity around the NFT rather than duping people through the initial mint.
Well said. Cool. Any other
Was
thoughts
there
about Goblin? Yeah.
there were no royalties, right? That's what Tim said. Yeah,
No.
I'm not sure, but
As far as I know, they're not making any money off of it. They just kept 1,000 of the NFTs in reserve that they have in like a vault or something.
Oh,
yeah,
that's even
interesting.
better. I thought there was a royalty associated with the trading of them. So to me, that's even better than the big mint fees plus fat royalties. Like I don't know, some of these NFT projects they don't make me feel that easy when they have all these ways that they're making money off of them without necessarily doing anything for the project. And I think Pudgy Penguins is the best example of this, where they had these huge royalties, but they weren't doing jack for the project.
What do we? This is just kind of an offhanded question, but what do we think is a fair royalty? I know what is common between 10 and 15%, I think. And what do you think is fair?
They're usually around 10, but yeah, I guess I
mean,
would go with like 5, probably.
5. Because Mitchell raises an interesting point versus the idea of like an art collection that the value of the royalty is derived strictly from the original production of the art, right? And that's value from the secondary market. Whereas, and I guess in a case like this, you might compare it to something like Punchy Penguins, where there's no further utility developed after the fact. I guess the question is are the royalties? I don't know if I have a question here. Are royalties just for? Is it fair to put a project out, say it's done, it's complete, and whatever royalties I make, that's just the
Well,
royalties I make?
on the topic of royalties, when you ask like what is a acceptable amount, I always
Mm-hmm.
check to see what cut the creators are taking, and if it's what I perceive to be an excessively high cut, it kind of raises a red flag. I think I agree with Christian here about 5%. 2.5% to 5% seems reasonable, but I do see a lot of projects, even ones that get a lot of hype and traction. They have, like maybe 10%, even sometimes 15% in a few cases. And that, like I say, it's a red flag. I feel it's extractive, and you're making enough money already on them, I think. And I think that's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this depends as well when we're talking about projects, right? So that's like the idea of like these presumably PFP collections like Pudgy Penguins or Goblintown. I think it potentially could be different if we're talking about like actual one of one artists. And this is kind of an opinion I've expressed in the past, right? But I kind of see that as more true to like the spirit of like digital art and where NFTs have sort of more lasting value than the like PFP set. If someone makes some like amazing generative art collection and that they spent a year coding and they take like 10% every time that sells, and maybe they sell for if it's something like Fidenza, like $100,000 plus, I think that's fair enough. More than I guess what I would potentially describe can be occasionally cash grabs that we see in elsewhere in the space. So I think there's probably a distinction between different types of NFTs and like art and collections there are, but maybe others feel differently. But I'm just not a particular fan of I guess a lot of the things that have blown up in the NFT space this year and or over the last sort of 18 months. And if we had more people like Beeple or Xcopy or Fuocious, if they were the ones making the headlines more than like, Beeple did, but more than like say Bored Ape Yacht Club, If people understood that this was like a digital art sort of renaissance movement happening, maybe the mainstream perception of this would be different to how it is today, because people are like, oh, you're just speculating on monkey pictures. And especially if you even have someone like Vitalik saying this, right? Yeah, I don't know if anyone agrees, but
I think you raise a very good point about the production process of a piece of art. And it ties directly to how you would price it and figure in the royalties of such a piece. Creating art is labor. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes materials, it takes capital. All these things are to be taken into consideration when, especially producing like someone like a Beeple, who famously um, made art every day for years before finally selling that one big NFT and becoming the household name that he is now. Like, that was work that went into valuing that piece. So I guess maybe to kind of wrap up this subject, like, do you guys evaluate that when you're looking at an NFT? Christian, I'm curious to hear you go a little deeper on this. Like, what do you look for in a piece of art that sort of signals to you that this was, I don't know, made with love, or the kind of artistic attention that you're looking for in a piece?
yeah, I mean, when it comes to let's just say, the PFPs, I see like CryptoPunks as something I would like to own for pure like historical relevance, and the fact that it was like essentially grown out of like a group of sort of Ethereum natives, like the early adopters of this blockchain, as it were, like the most used blockchain. But then when I'm looking at like the actual NFT space and stuff that I would, classify as art and potentially, have up on your wall, that's what I am often asking, right? And yeah, I mean, I'm particularly drawn to like the art block stuff, like where these guys have, spent months coding something and it has all these kind of amazing, colorful outputs. I mean, Fidenza is an obvious example, but there are, a lot of these where, just clicking through it on OpenSea or Art Blocks itself, it's not like any other art I've sort of seen before. And yeah, I think that's special and something that, could sort of we look back at and be like, oh yeah, that was like, the birth of something pretty significant in art, because this isn't something that's kind of gained recognition and been like monetized in the past. And then you just have, the names like Fuocious, say. I mean, I look at his stuff and it's like is not that different to like Basquiat to me. Like he has such a voice and it's so distinctive. And you just look at his piece and straight away that it's a Fuocious. And it's the same with Xcopy with like his glitch stuff, right? It's like no one else. People have copied it and like been inspired by it, but he was like the first one to do it, and he's been doing this since. He or she, I should say, is a non artist since 2018. And then I guess photography, someone like Drift, who's climbing on buildings and has a real story to it as well. The way he was doing all this, free running because he had PTSD from being in the army, and then just started taking a camera out and like taking photos of it, and then almost got jailed for it. And turns out he just minted NFTs after sort of getting out of prison. And I think people are really drawn to that story, and that's why he's become like what some would say is, one of the blue chip artists, as it were. And yeah, maybe some of these guys aren't going to truly be recognized for a long time, but I think there will be a small handful that we look back on like, yeah, they were like actual artists that sort of led the the crypto art movement, whatever you want to call it. And there will be more. There'll probably be a couple that come out next year. Maybe there's one working this year, and they're about to drop a collection, in a few months, or they, do something next year, and then we'll be talking about them as the next people, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I thank you. That was a thoughtful, reflective answer. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, there's something interesting about distinctive artists. I agree. Like you can see a Picasso and just know instantly that's Picasso. The same with I hate to say people, but I think it's true people too. Any last thoughts on NFTs before we move on to something else? We haven't heard from Navesh or Nathan or Thomas yet. Nathan, I'd be curious. Christian mentioned the concept of a blue chip NFT artist. You're a trader. You're in the markets. Is there any such thing as a blue chip NFT at this point, or is that just something NFT traders tell themselves?
Yeah, I think that's just something traders talk themselves. I don't tend to focus on NFT, so I think maybe Navesh should probably give you a better answer in regard to that
Fair
question
enough.
to me. Yeah.
Navesh, would you like to weigh in? We can't hear you, buddy. Maybe while Navesh is working on his, is he coming through for anybody else, or is it just?
No, we can't hear him.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we take a moment while Navesh is working on his audio to introduce, I'm going to put him on the spot, to introduce Tom. Tom is a new member of our team here at Crypto Briefing. And Tom, don't feel pressured to answer a question about blue chip NFTs specifically, but I would be curious to get your perspective on the NFT space generally, and also just introduce yourself to the people. How are you doing, Tom?
All good here. Thanks for the warm introduction. Yeah, I'm Tom. I'm new to Crypto Briefing. I'm helping out in the editorial team. So you'll be seeing some of my articles coming out pretty much daily. Actually, completely daily. NFTs. NFTs. I've my background's in art and literature and everything like that. So I tend to agree with Christian on a lot of stuff. Christian's monologue, I agreed with mostly. I tend to not value the PFP collections much, but I understand the interest in them. I think I can't remember who talked about it, but I think someone I think it was IMDC investor. He had this really useful framework to think about NFTs. He said you've got those NFTs that you think about in terms of art, people or people pleaser. You've got those PFP collections like Bored Apes. You've got the cultural ones or the historical ones like CryptoPunks, and you have he had one last thing. I can't remember. It was the current fashion thing or something like that. But yeah, distinguishing NFTs by category helps me a lot. I don't really speculate on NFTs or anything like that myself, but I do pay attention. I love to see artists, digital artists, being able to get paid, especially because it is so tough in the real world to get paid for your art. So I think it's awesome that crypto's offering an avenue for that. And I think right now it's kind of like the ICO stuff, phase of NFTs, where we've got a lot of garbage and a lot of money grabs and everything there. But as time comes by, we'll probably end up talking more about single artists or legit projects. I'm personally fascinated by everything People Pleaser does. So I'm very much looking forward to see how digital art evolves really.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. And Navesh, you're back with us. Have you sorted out your audio issue?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Excellent.
Yeah. So I don't follow artists much. For me, it's basically what kind of token the NFTs can give us. and what kind of community is backing it. So yeah, but I agree with all the points that were said by the others here, that PFP is obviously overrated for now, and like ICO projects, most of them are gonna die, and I think those project like makers themselves have said that 95% of them are going to die. So that's but that's not a very bad picture about NFTs, because what I'm seeing is that that part about like an artist being able